Where's Jimmy?
Yeah, where is Jimmy?
Okay.
Well, we've got Luke here, so.
I can replace him.
Yeah, you're slated to replace him anyway. So okay. So who here is all right? Let's kind of feel too far in the room. Who here does not know what SPI is? No one. Is everyone? Who here is a contributing member of SPI? Okay, and then so there's like maybe 5 or 6 people that are not members.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Because no one's wearing the NMQ on it right now.
Oh, we just fixed that. We got new people.
Ah.
One of them's sitting behind you. Okay. Well, maybe if all we accomplish is that you walk out and sign up for the contributing membership, then we'll have made a small success. So I will do a kind of a little baby introduction to SPI and kind of how things stand and what our goals are and where we're going to go. And then I would like this to turn into a conversation after that, so we can talk about the sorts of things that maybe SPI has done and people like, and maybe some of the sorts of things that SPI has not done. Is not done, or people would like to see it do in the future, and then we can kind of, so I think that actually a lot of feedback that we've got in previous DevConfs at similar meetings like this have been very useful to me and to other people on the board in terms of deciding where to focus. There are some things, clearly we can't do everything, so people may suggest something that it's a really great idea, but we can't follow up on. But I think that most people would agree that the SPI has been on an upward track over the last couple of years. So, and has been accomplishing more of the things that we want to do and doing better. So Software in the Public Interest is a nonprofit organization that is founded to help organizations distribute open hardware and software. In reality, we focus almost entirely on some of the, hey, you can sit up at the front.
Okay.
All right. We've got a lot. We have a quorum, don't we? Almost. One away. We're one short.
Yeah, but I don't think we can expect another.
Okay, so
don't expect Bruce to walk in.
Yeah. so we almost. So for a very long time, getting quorum was of the board was actually very difficult. And now we almost have it just sitting in this room.
We really need to do a face-to-face meeting sometime. We almost have now.
Yeah. So Software in the Public Interest is a nonprofit organization that helps people distribute open hardware and open software, in particular free software. In reality, we focus almost entirely on supporting free software projects in a number of ways. The basic idea. So I'll describe how that works. Software in the Public Interest was a nonprofit organization that was created in 1997. And it was incorporated in New York State. So it's a U.S. organization, and it is what's called a 501c3, which basically means that if you're in the U.S. and you give money to it, and you give money to SPI, you can deduct it from your taxes. It's like the most charitable kind of charity. There are less charitable charities. I mean, there are some where you get to deduct less or deduct differently, but 501c3s are probably the most limited type of organization in terms of the types of things that you can do. You can't, for example, advocate a particular politician. You can't. There are lots of limits. If you were to start
You
working,
can't run issue ads.
You can't run issue ads. You can't. If you give money to other organizations overseas, if you transfer money, it has to be to an organization with a similar standing or with at least as charitable status in whatever the other rules are. It's a little bit tricky. But the benefit, of course, is that people have a major incentive to, at least people in the U.S. have a major incentive to donate. Yeah.
Can I add that it's not just that people themselves have a major incentive to donate, but often employers have matching gift programs. So if an employee
Yes.
arranges for some money to come out of his check, in many cases the employer will match it,
Yeah.
doubling the effectiveness of the donation to SBI, the size.
Yeah. So that's yeah. So there's a number of benefits that in some ways mean that mean that SPI has more resources in the end because people are more interested in donating to that type of organization, at least in the U.S. There are a number of different nonprofit organizations with similar or identical statuses in the U.S. and abroad. The major ones seem to be, I mean, the Free Software Foundation and the Open Source Initiative, and then there's Software in the Public Interest. Now, and then there are a number of these foundations which are popping up per project, which has been something we've been seeing in recent years. So for example, the GNOME Foundation will create a foundation, and the and then Apache has a foundation, and
Gentoo
has a foundation. Clone has a foundation now. I mean, a lot of these different groups are creating their own foundations for larger projects. These kind of super projects, the hundreds of contributors kind of level, are creating their own foundations to support development. So Software in the Public Interest was kind of like this. It was created by people that were involved in the Debian project to serve the Debian project, but it also had kind of a bigger vision, which was also supporting other projects and a wider variety of projects through taking donations and helping funnel that into development or development resources. People can donate a piece of hardware and write off that donation on their taxes, or a company can do this. And there's a number of benefits to this.
Yeah, and part of the reason that was the idea was because it's a non-trivial amount of labor, paperwork, and money to set up a 501c3 organization. So I think a large part of the original motivation, as I recall from email threads anyway, was
Do it once.
Yeah, do it once, and then we can serve lots of these little open source free software projects that pop up. And Debian was just, you know, the one with an instant need.
But and in a way, because Debian is, I mean, I find this kind of cool because Debian, in many ways, is like you know, it's a little encapsulation of the free software universe.
Yeah.
It includes, you know, all of the projects that, you know, that would be potential member or actual member projects are within Debian as well. So in this way, SPI is basically is as far as I know unique. In that it's an organization that is willing to serve a variety of different organizations in terms of potentially holding intellectual property, things like trademarks, and we could do copyright assignments, although we don't already. There's been talk about doing it for some kind of shared resources, for example, the Debian website, or something like this. Things that are really kind of project creations, which would be useful because there have been situations where people might want to relicense, and it's not realistic to find every person who's made a change to a web page in Debian. This has been a little bit of in order to say, hey, so do you agree with moving to a different license?
I'm not totally sure if the existing Debian website license would be legitimate for packaging within Debian.
That's the problem, is that the Debian website license is one that people are not happy with, and people will want to change. So this is something that has been an idea, changing this to.
Same goes for the trademark license.
Yeah. So we've got holding intellectual property and holding money.
Domain names too.
Are the main two things. We also provide legal support. Because we have a lawyer. Yes, we have who's I guess we changed lawyers about a year ago, but we've got a lawyer who's worked for a little while on our trademark license, and he's actually now in the he's also a Debian maintainer. He works for a big law firm, and he maintains a couple packages, and is in the NM queue. So, which is probably pretty cool. I don't think any other foundations have lawyers that are also developers. So,
Depends on how you measure that.
Well, as I understand it, even Moglin got his undergraduate degree in computer science.
But
I
Moglin,
don't know that he does a lot of coding.
Evan Moglin, he doesn't do very much. Evan Moglin worked with as the general counsel for the FSF, and he actually worked sharing a desk with Richard Stallman when he was 19 years old in a computer company. So he's a real hacker too. But
It's an interesting world.
So so those are the two major ways. It's kind of like an umbrella organization for other organizations. In reality, about 90% of SPI is the Debian project. There is one board member who is from another member project. So the other member projects that are active are Drupal, OFTC, who is where our other board member is from. Our secretary is from OFTC. Drupal, OFTC,
WX widgets,
WX widgets,
Fresco.
They're not active, are
They are still hosted by us.
and they still like ask things. They don't actually get a lot of money, but they do.
Oh, they do.
support. But they don't
We actually host
okay.
them.
they? Well, I knew we still hosted them, but I wasn't aware that anyone from that project actually still said anything. So.
Yeah, they talk to Wiggy, and that's about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
That counts.
GNU Tech Max.
Yeah, and then the older, and then
GNU Step.
GNU Step, right?
Yeah.
So GNU Step. So there's a number of these projects. Basically, there seems to be a project that is big enough, like Drupal or WX widgets and a number of these things. They're big enough that they could really use some kind of, they have people that want to make donations of hardware, of money, in a number of these things, and they're really looking for a legal shell. But they're small enough that creating an entire organization would be a little overkill for them.
On their website, they're actually talking about doing that now. I'm very confused.
WX widgets?
No, Drupal.
Oh.
So,
Yeah,
so
okay.
I mean, it seems totally, and so there have been a couple examples of projects that have kind of outgrown SPI in the past,
Yeah.
and then kind of grown into their own.
Oh.
Little ones like GNOME, yeah.
And the open source initiative.
And the open source initiative. Well, there's questions whether it was kind of pushed out the door.
Yeah, I know.
And there's some places where growth is not necessarily good.
Yeah.
So the open source, so probably the most famous baby SPI projects that have grown out are the open source initiative and the GNOME, and the GNOME project, which were both, kind of, at least some parts of them were within SPI early on, and then they kind of they left one way or another, and went to create their own.
Well, when 3/4 of the 4-man SPI board vanished and left poor Ian as the lone remaining board member,
Yeah.
the SPI was significantly disrupted for a couple of years. But one thing to underscore, and now that I've made that understatement, I'd like to underscore that a lot of people have the perception that SPI only really serves Debian, but unless $1,000 is a trivial amount of money, WX Widgets had a fundraiser, which they didn't actually tell us that they were going to do, but they did it after they joined us, and they raised a pretty fair amount of money, and we got it to them. Yeah,
Cool.
and we actually turned that around fairly quickly. Now at this point, this is something like a year to 18 months ago,
Mhm.
but that was one thing I managed to not screw up as treasurer, so I'm pretty happy about that.
So yeah. So there's a number of so there's a growing number of and it's and of these member projects, 3 of them are in the last year, I think, or in the last like.
Yeah, I'd
year.
also point out that the other organizations that do things kind of like SPI and SPI do talk to each other. We have a lot of cross connections with, well, the FSF one is fairly obvious, I guess, but there's actually a meeting coming up just before the O'Reilly Open Source Convention in Portland that I've agreed to show up for to represent SPI, where people from the GNOME Foundation and I forget, there's this whole list of other nonprofits, and not just from the US but from other countries. We'll all be getting together for a couple days to figure out what, if anything, we could share.
Sure. I read about that.
So,
Also, SPI and the Open Source Initiative have had mutual observer status at the past, and we're talking about reestablishing that as well, which will probably happen.
Yeah. It just occurred to me you didn't introduce us, and so.
Oh,
people might
okay.
not
So
know
I'll
who
introduce
everybody
the
is.
other SPA people over here. Maybe you can stand up actually and introduce yourself. That would be awesome.
Alright, I am Jimmy Kaplowitz. I am the SPI treasurer. I've been a board member since I became treasurer in February 2004.
So, yeah, that's like a thankless job. So
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
thank you.
I
should know how to make this.
I'm Ian Jackson. I've been on the board ever since I can remember, and I'm basically just being a pain in the backside.
Hi, I'm Brandon Robinson, erstwhile SPI treasurer. I'm now the deputy treasurer. I still get a lot of the mail and the checks, and I try to deposit those on a regular basis. And you know, let's see, I was actually properly re-elected to the board last year, was it?
Was it? I think so.
Yeah. So yeah, Bdale and I ran at the same time, and we both got elected onto the board. So that's who I am.
Yeah, I'm Gideon Garvey. I've served as an advisor to the SPI board for a while, and then officially as Debian's representative during the time that I was DPL, and then served as sort of, I went back to an advisory sort of status after I finished my tenure as DPL, and then finally got around to thinking that maybe I'd actually run for a board seat, and have been on the board now for a little over a year, I guess, and continue to just sort of, you know, try and provide a little adult supervision.
So the board, SPI is a membership organization, and there are two classes of membership. There are contributing members and non-contributing members. There are not very many non-contributing members. I have the numbers up here. So let me find the exact numbers. But there are somewhere in the range of a contributing member is anybody who is. Oh, there are a lot of non-contributing members.
We should mention the other board members too.
Okay, so I can't. You can
There's John Gorzen, who is the president, and you're the vice
I'm
president.
the vice president.
And Jimmy's the treasurer, and David Graham of OFTC is the secretary. And so let's see, we've got Bdale. We got Bruce Perrins. He was elected to the board in the same round as myself and
No,
Bdale. I
he
think.
was with me.
Oh, that's right. We've had two of those elections. Okay. Let's see, who are
Joey Schultze.
forgetting? That's right, Joey Schultze. He's also been on the SPI board for a very long time,
Mhm.
since before me or Bdale, I think.
And then, is there anybody else, or is that? I don't
We don't-
remember.
if we
I
don't-
have the list.
If we
so
don't remember
I'll,
them,
I'll,
do they count?
I'll see if
And
I.
everybody on the board except for David Graham is involved with Debian, and David Graham is involved in OFTC, and I am also nominally an OFTC staff member, although I do very little for them. But
Yeah. For those who don't know, OFTC is largely an IRC network that is an alternative to Freenet.
That's actually the full list. That's everybody. So, and then there are a couple advisors.
Yes.
Gregory Pomerantz is the legal counsel, so he doesn't. But that's okay because he's usually at work when we have meetings anyway. And then Jeff Waugh is Jeff Waugh is, at least in theory, the well, he is actually the Genome Foundation board representative. So this is another way of kind of trying to keep that.
He talks to various of us at different times, but being in Australia, the time sync is.
Sure. I mean, I talk to Jeff Waugh all the time, but not only probably every couple months about SPI.
And at various times, we've had kind of an observing board member from OSI.
Mhm.
The most recent, I believe, was Guido van Rossum,
Yes.
the author of Python, and he was affiliated with OSI for a time. I'm not sure he still is, but while he was, he sat in on SPI board meetings.
Mm-hmm. So we are so SPI is a membership organization. There are two kinds of members. There are contributing members and non-contributing members. Contributing, it refers to contributing in any way to the free software community, not to paying money. There are no dues to become a member of SPI. To become a non-contributing member, you just sign up. Is that correct? So if you just want to, if you want to be a non-contributing member, you just go to the webpage and say sign me up. And evidently, almost 300 people have done that. Contributing members, there are also about 300 contributing members. And contributing members are people who have, contributed in some way to the free software community. If you are a member of the Debian project or another member project, it's automatic.
Yeah, you're automatically eligible. You do actually need to go to the website and sign up. You don't, you don't get automatically subscribed to mailing lists and stuff like that. But if you're a Debian developer, then you're automatically eligible for contributing membership. And I suspect most people who are in the new maintainer queue, because of the fairly high requirements these days, most people in the MQ seem to have sponsor packages and stuff. Then you're probably also contributing substantially enough to become an SPI contributing member.
I mean,
so if that's something you'd be interested in doing, and you're not yet a Debian developer, don't let that discourage you.
I mean, basically, the process works something like, I'm a contributing member, I work on these projects, and then there's a little bit of Googling. And if it looks like you don't work on those projects, like, I work on, Python, and then you search the Python mailing list, and there's no messages from you, and you say, okay, maybe I should ask you again for some more information. But if it's clear that you're contributing in some way, then it's like, it's pretty
So,
easy.
compared to the Debian NM process, it's pretty lightweight.
Yeah.
We have a recently chosen new membership committee, right?
Right. So the new, so for a long time, it was Martin Mickelmeyer and Peter Fossberger, who ran the, kind of maintained the websites for voting and for this whole membership process.
Also the guidelines for joining.
And then, so there's voting stuff, and then they in April of this year, the two of them said, we've done this for a long time, and we're going to move on to other stuff, and so we have a new membership committee. So there's a little bit of a hitch in there, but so there were a few people waiting, a couple dozen people, but the new membership committee is Graham Wilson, Luke Klaas, okay, Luke Klaas, and Michael
Schultheis.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael Schultheis is a coworker of mine. He works.
Sure, I just don't know how to pronounce his name. So.
Yeah.
But, and then Michael Schultheis. So that's the.
He's also a Debian developer.
Cool. So I think so that's our membership committee. And actually, Luke is also Greg Pomeranz, our lawyer's application manager for Debian, which is a little bit funny.
Let me mention the main benefit of membership is that it renders you eligible to vote in the elections for the board of directors.
Yeah.
I don't think Mako explicitly said that, but we mentioned election to the board, and that is how you get a vote, is by becoming a contributing member of SPI.
Right, and those will happen, I guess, every year or every other year, depending on when people are being elected.
Yeah, we didn't require any this year because nobody's seat was expiring. It's for a 3-year term?
3-year terms.
Yeah.
So and I think that you probably should be, if you're planning on running for the board, you should also probably be a contributing member. Because,
Yeah. Bruce Perrins didn't bother, and it didn't stop him, but as a rule.
But
You can't vote for yourself, you can vote for yourself.
so yeah. And there'll be elections next year for a number of seats, actually.
Yeah.
For, I think like 4.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit
for
of
like 4 or 5
turnover.
seats. So thinking about this in the future would be good. So I think let me look and see if I have anything else.
That would be July 1st of next year when that happens, because by our bylaws we have to meet on July 1st, no matter what day of the week it is. If it's Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter. The annual meeting is July 1st, so if you want to influence the outcome of the next board election, you've got just about a year to.
I think that starts the nomination period. I think you can nominate through July 13th or so.
Thank you.
So in any case,
Jimmy's got the details now.
so in any case, the last thing I want to say before I kind of open things up is that that there's been this kind of so one problem with SPI, which is actually like a problem with the way that like I guess like businesses work internationally and charities work internationally, is that SPI is more useful in the U.S. than it is outside of the U.S. And there was a strategic decision, or perhaps not a strategic decision, to make it a U.S. Organization. A lot of people do that. But there are still people who want to give money to charitable organizations that don't live in the U.S. Right? And working with that can be a little bit. And just people who want to give money to Debian in a way. So
Can I come in there
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
say that the relationship of SPI with, say, Debian or indeed with any other project is not exclusive. So
Yes.
there are other organisations, for example, there's
FFIS.
there's FFIS, there's the Debian UK thing that Steve
Yep.
Max set up.
Mhm.
And given that you have to have an American organisation for American taxpayers to get those tax benefits, there has to be an American organisation, and that's what SPI is. But often it doesn't make sense for
Yeah,
people
when we were setting up,
outside the US to deal with American organisations because it's just too complicated.
and also
So-
local charity laws are quite often extreme. If we were trying to set the same thing up in the UK, the Debian UK
we've set up as an informal society.
Mhm.
And we have a bank account. Well, we may have a bank account if the bank ever gets their fucking act together. In the UK, to do a full-on charity is so difficult to actually have the aims that we have.
Well, it is in the US too. You have to have
Yeah.
a board, you have to have all these
I know,
things.
I mean, as well as that,
Yeah.
there are some fairly strict rules about what you can do and not do, the same.
Same thing.
But it's quite difficult to find the slot of the sort of charity that you are, that,
Yeah.
that you can possibly fit into, because there are about 5 different types of charities. And
That's right.
So SPI is a little bit. There are a few things that. So this is true. So there are. So it's not an exclusive relationship. There are many organizations that support that hold assets for the Debian project or for other member projects. For other member projects internationally.
I've been trying to report on some of those in my DPL reports to date, and it's interesting. I just want to underscore Ian's point, because it's interesting as we move DevConf around from place to place, we seem to find new organizations to become affiliated with and hold assets with. Like, I don't think Linux Activatori had very much of a relationship with Debian until now, and I'm hoping that will be an ongoing thing. And the same thing with the Brazil Linux Association.
The Software Libre.
That's right.
The project, the Software Libre project. So.
Yeah, in Brazil last year because of DevConf 4. So that's been a nice side effect of having DevConf globetrot a little bit, is that we are
Accreting
accreting.
organization.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you.
So there's also money being stored or beginning to be stored in Linux Australia. On
It's there already. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Right.
Christian Surkey is holding money for Debian in Italy as well, and there's money in the UK and there's money in other places. So SPI occupies a special place. It has an international board, and it tries to represent a larger number of a broader section, because there are some things that SPI does that other organization doesn't, like holding, for example, the Debian trademark. When the Debian trademark is registered it has been registered internationally, like in Europe and in Brazil,
Japan as well.
and in Japan, and in those situations, if someone else registers it, our lawyer contacts them, and if otherwise, we'll register it ourselves. So this has been something that I mean, SPI is has kind of, in terms of this
It's
relationship.
first among
to-
equals.
and it also holds the most money for Debian.
Except for DevConf.
Except for DevConf, that's true. DevConf.
So I mean,
about
maybe
3
you'd
times
like
the
to
amount
share
of
with
total
us
assets.
exactly how much. Obviously, we don't know exactly how much money, but
40 around. It's somewhere in the order of so SPI holds somewhere in the order of 50,000.
50,000 in gross assets, of which probably at least 80% are.
42K or so, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe.
Okay.
So holding.
And the reason we don't have a
$42,000.
precise figure, and I'll go ahead, because since I was earlier treasurer and I'm closer to the fuck up, is the reason we don't know the exact numbers is because a lot of the early paperwork having to do with the bank accounts that SPI was holding at the time was lost by a previous treasurer. No, not me. I made different mistakes. And so for some very old money, we simply don't know how the donations were earmarked. We had 2 different bank accounts with American Express Centurion Bank, but one of them got defrauded. So
So I think the key is to
It's been a
point out that we
terrible
do know how much money we're holding.
Yes.
But we're not sure what the split was intended to be between Debian and other
Yes,
projects.
exactly.
so we've got all this money, but we're not entirely sure what it's for.
Yeah, so some of it's part of the SPI general fund and some is for Debian.
You gotta.
Way back when the original screw up with the records happened, there was a vote, I'm not sure if it was a Debian vote or an SPI vote.
It was an SPI vote. It was an SPI vote.
To just split up the funds as 80% Debian, 20%.
A 5% rule, I think.
Yeah, I think it was.
It was 95 and 5.
And so is there any reason there isn't just a vote to split it up and decide there's exactly this much for Debian now and we'll
Right, we've
track it properly from now
Not
on?
been 100% accurate in our record keeping since then, unfortunately.
So
I
why
think
can't
we-
we
I
do
think
it
we-
again now?
I think we have been pretty accurate since Brandon.
We don't know exactly what the donation, what the earmark split is of the donations between then and now. I think we've got all of the information, but it
Yes.
hasn't been added up.
Yes,
Right.
we've
And so it doesn't appear in our kind of, you know,
Right.
you look at our financial statements and you can't tell by looking at our financial statements, even since then, so it's not just sort of one lump sum that's a regional rate.
So
So
if-
one thing that's been happening recently is Jimmy's been doing a much better job than we've seen previously from really anybody in getting something approaching
right.
a normal financial reporting.
So the other so financial reporting is getting better when we're handling it, and it's about to get better when we're not handling it because we're hiring a bookkeeping service in New York City that is just basically going to take they're
So-
going to. Yeah.
To answer your question specifically, Anthony, I don't think another vote's required because what we may have missed in the noise in that discussion is that the combination of that vote and the information that we have records on since then should be sufficient to get those numbers. They just don't appear in the financial statement yet.
Is that a reasonably easy thing or very hard thing?
I think it ought to be easy, but it hasn't gotten done.
I think it will be done. So we're working with the bookkeeper for all the information on this here. I suspect it will be done in the next month or two. So we're going to be so we've got this bookkeeper, and we're going to be the idea is sending them anything with a number on it, and then they're going to be splitting things up by member project. They're going to handle a lot of this stuff, and then they'll say, you know, here's the PDF with, you know, all your information.
We've been talking about doing this for years. It's
Graphs.
great that we're finally getting, you know,
Yeah.
the silly bookkeeping stuff done by somebody who does that professionally.
Right,
You know,
because
understand
treasurer after treasurer has crumbled under the burden of having to do all the fiddly, bookkeeping themselves.
We're not good at keeping some.
Right.
And that's fine.
And everybody thinks it should be a cakewalk, and so anybody who fails is just a screw up. But time and again with our treasurers, we've just seen that a volunteer can't do it. So we said, we've got SPI has some general fund. There are people who donate money to SPI and don't say give it all to Debian. They want to support the organization generally, and it seems to make a lot of sense to spend that on making ourselves a more responsive and responsible organization.
So the two developments recently are in terms of bookkeeping and such is basically a decision to go ahead and hire a bookkeeper in New York City to kind of put stuff together, and kind of a little bit of a wonder from Luke here, who's evidently an advanced accountant.
Yes.
You'll have to explain exactly what advanced accounting is.
Well,
It means that
Yes.
It means
that means
he
when you
manages
cook the books, you don't get caught.
it means he manages advanced accounts, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Accounts that have been offered to someone.
So we have also a little bit of new blood in a couple different places in terms of that. So since we're kind of I guess there's not that much time left. If people have kind of questions or comments or I think there's been loose hints of where we're going. I mean, I think that we'll probably we've seen more new member projects in the last year and a half than we had total member projects before.
Yes.
And I think that this is going to continue because as we continue to do a better job of keeping getting the money sorted out and have a quicker turnaround and things like that, will become a more attractive place for a lot of these organizations. I think of this size. I don't think we're going to be having the next like Debian-sized projects joining up, and that's okay. But this is a way that Debian can kind of another way that Debian developers can kind of work with people in the free software community to help.
Does anybody else have
support-
questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering, might it be a good idea for all the organizations such as SPI, FFIS, and anything else that comes along, agree to have their membership be mutually members of the other groups, so we at least have one kind of,
it's interesting. Different people have different impressions about what the right thing to do is here. When I was Debian project leader, I asserted that we should just take everyone who's a registered Debian developer and declare that they were a contributing member of SPI. And there was lots of discussion / concern about, well, that would mean they were automatically added to another mailing list that maybe they didn't want to be a member of. And in general, the perception was that having a larger number of members who weren't necessarily committed to the organization and who wouldn't necessarily show up for elections and make quorums and things like this, it probably wasn't the brightest idea. So at the end of the day, we ended up with an agreement that anyone who was a registered developer with Debian would be immediately granted contributing member status if they asked for it. And so I suspect that the reality is that if you showed up at any of these other organizations and said, I'm a contributing member of SPI, they would go, wonderful, we're glad to have you here. But my suspicion is that the same kind of criteria might apply. And,
But perhaps there could be like a separate
So
level
what
of
is
membership. Just so
FFII's
that,
criterion for membership? Do we know? I mean,
Ask Joey Schultze.
I have no idea.
yeah, I mean, there might have to be like a lowest common denominator kind of level
So
of membership, but just so that we can claim, you know, like bigger numbers, like you can see that the whole
Well, let me
community is
follow
much
up on
larger.
Miguel's remark though. There were also some people who simply didn't want to be affiliated with a U.S. corporation. I mean, even if it was nonprofit, even if it was affiliated with Debian. And I think one concern that other organizations might have, especially if they're smaller, is they don't want to be swamped with a glut of Americans, potentially dominating their organization. I mean, they're trying to set up something local. So,
and this is something that we've seen with money. So, for example, the money that is put together in the UK is, as far as I know, spent in the UK. I know that this is certainly the case in Italy, for example, as well. When they get money at Italian booths, at booths or something like that, they will spend that money to help buy CDs or a banner or something for the Italian booth, and that's totally okay. That's great, and that kind of local kind of support and storing funds is great, and I think that the role of SPI and Debian is to kind of coordinate that. So
I think this is a question that I'll inject into the discussion at this sort of forum of organizations that's going to be convening before OSCON. By the way, there'll be another meeting of this sort of group of groups before the OSCON Europe thing later in the year. So I don't know if I'll get to that one or not yet, but we'll see whether this one seems worth repeating.
And kind of related to that, I think there's also kind of little amount of fragmentation going on even in the US, because I think I read in like LWN or somewhere that now there's like an open source legal center or something.
oh, well, the Software Freedom Law
There's the
Center,
software-
that's a very different organization.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Because I remember thinking around that time that, well, that's kind of something like what
So,
SPI
Software Freedom Law Center, Software Freedom Law Center is basically people from the FSF who kind of created another organization that is now kind of, the FSF is now outsourcing a lot of work to. I mean, that's one way to think of it. But there's a good amount of kind of legal work that the FSF used to do for itself that people in the FSF want to open up to a wider variety of primarily volunteer projects.
A simpler way of stating it is that it's attempting to provide legal
services.
aid resources to projects, and that's a little different than
Volunteer
the charter.
projects, yeah. I mean, it's a law firm.
If we didn't
Yeah.
already have, legal counsel willing to represent us, in the same way that some other foundations have chosen to go talk to SFLC, we probably would as well.
Well, I think that we probably will eventually as well,
Yeah.
because so
I think we
before
want
the
a
SFLC
relationship with them at the very least, because
Before the Software Freedom Law Center was created, they approached us and they said, and Evan said, hey, this is what I'm doing. He is in regular conversation, Evan Milgram from the Freedom Law Center, he is in regular conversation with Greg Pomerantz, our lawyer. And I think that if push came to shove and Debian and SPI finds itself, with, I don't know,
no counsel.
or even just in a situation where
yeah.
where Greg wants some help because someone says you're infringing on this patent or something.
Right.
Like I am relatively confident that the Software Freedom Law Center would become involved in one way or another.
One of the things we've done over the past year that brings to mind service of process. One of the things SPI has done over the past year is we actually have a professional company serving as our registered agent. What that means is we have a legal address for the service of process, which means if somebody sues us, it's not showing up in a Debian developer's post office box, which was the case for a lot of years. And in fact, because the address hadn't been updated, it would have been Tim Saylor's mailbox in Boston, Massachusetts. And who's heard of Tim Saylor in the past 5 years? So that's one of the things we've done. And so CSC, Corporation Services Company, is somebody we have we're retaining to serve that role for us. So
they're in New York
it's
State,
one of the small
so-
but significant ways in which we've been making progress over the past
And
year.
I can see how other projects might need that kind of service too. So,
Yeah.
if like SPI could become like the one-stop you know, administrative support for, you know, free
That-
software projects.
That was the vision, and what we've seen is Mako mentioned earlier, there are a number of other projects that either due to scale or due to personal or political considerations have decided they'd like to run their own corporations and have been willing to do the paperwork for the U.S. registration process. We've ended up, even just in the U.S., with, you know, a half dozen or 8 sort of interesting foundations, and if you add in the sort of significantly large enough to be worth inviting them to come to the U.S. for a meeting, there ends up being a list of almost 24 around the world that I think were invited to participate in this upcoming meeting. My hope actually is that, if nothing else, we'll figure out how to share some best practice knowledge. There are people, for example, who've done a lot more work on researching trademark issues and trademark licensing than we have. I think there are things that we have figured out that maybe they haven't, and so if we can share some of this stuff, maybe at least we end up, you know, leveraging some of that.
Just, you know, SPI has been butting its head against this problem for nearly a decade, and that's much longer than some of these other organizations.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't any such thing as GNOME or KDE in 1997, and so, you know, hopefully we do have something to bring to the table. Since BDL's been affiliated with it for a while, I think he's in a good position to share some of that expertise.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. I don't know how that process is going to work out in practice, but I'm encouraged actually that, you know, someone's taking the effort. It's actually the folks from the GNOME Foundation that triggered this this meeting to happen, and the O'Reilly folks agreed to provide a place for the meeting to occur before OSCON. So it's funny for me because I'm not actually going to OSCON this year, but I'm going to Portland for this meeting. So.
Right. So we'll come back with something called the Portland Prospectus.
Editorial changes.
Editorial changes in the SPI bylaws.
We're like out of time.
We could deal with some editorial changes.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions we want to get out now?
Well, actually,
No.
I've just been informed that we actually have more time because the next talk's not happening at all, or it's
No, there's nothing here until after lunch.
Yeah, but
okay.
but there's something going on in the larger auditorium.
Yeah, I mean, if you want,
People
but
may
if you
want to go to the
say
larger
here,
auditorium.
it's
What time does the next talk start in the other room?
Starts
at 10.
Okay, so we got
And
five
what is
minutes.
it?
So does anyone else have a question that we
It's
should
slow?
try and answer right now?
Fine. Okay.
We've all been very quiet.
Questions?
Concerning somehow. No other questions?
Well, I mean, has this been helpful? Do you feel more informed about SPI than you did before?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just wondering from where do you get your main funding? Who's funding?
It's all donations.
Donations.
We have no source of revenue apart from charitable giving on the part of businesses and mostly individuals.
So for example, about a year and a half ago, I went through the little bit of paperwork to arrange so that any Hewlett-Packard employee in the world who wants to donate to SPI can do it through the normal annual giving process through the web interface where you decide how you want to.
I deposited such a check recently.
So when it shows, there's like 1 or 2 people who did it last year. I'm hoping there'll be more this year.
I think-
And it shows up as a lumped deposit or something, and there's some annotation as to.
The names of the people. And just as a funny, interesting anecdote, Microsoft has a charitable giving program with matching, and there was a Microsoft employee who has donated out of their paycheck a not an inconsiderable sum of money. I think it's in the hundreds of dollars. And it's funny, because we keep we keep faxing back Microsoft keeps telling us you need to send us information so we can match this, and we fax it. And then about a month later, we get another letter saying, you need to send us information or we can't match this, and we fax them something. So I think we're much too small and insignificant to actually, you know, be harassed by Microsoft in this respect. But it's kind of funny to see that happen. So maybe someday we'll actually get some money directly from Microsoft.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, where do you think is areas of interest or something like that where SPI should evidently be more active, or where people would be needed to be more active, but it would be, are there any obvious kind of stuff that should be done but isn't done because nobody
There's a lot of people who come to SPI and they say, I have this really cool new idea for something to do, and you, SPI, should do it. And, well, that's obviously just not going to work. And anyway, SPI only does boring things.
Well, I mean, so
I mean, basically, SPI does accounts, and historically very badly. So if you've got some good thing that you want to do, then by all means come and talk to SPI, and we can put you on our list of projects or something. I mean, it doesn't really, it probably doesn't buy you anything.
I mean, to answer you concretely, something that needs to be done is a revision of our bylaws. Because the bylaws we have, they suck, they are internally inconsistent, and they're awful. And before you make what may be the obvious assumption, they were lifted wholesale from a boilerplate set of bylaws that I believe the legal firm that originally chartered, helped us to charter SPI set up. So these are like real professional businesses bylaws, and they're internally inconsistent and they suck. It's not like one of our volunteers. I think Ian Jackson, if he took the time to do it, would come up with something far superior.
We're not creative enough to make these up.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that sort of thing, it'd be wonderful to have that worked on. And the other thing is, I think it would actually be really interesting to see SPI specifically represented at some of the more interesting conferences and events. They're particularly the ones that have, a .org pavilion or some other, sort of thing like this. It's my perception that our, peer organizations in other countries will usually show up and have a banner and answer questions from people and exhibit form, things like that. I don't think SPI has ever
At least if there was some kind of general one-page introduction to SPI, like we can have a flyers and
Another thing is if people have ideas on how, despite the fact that we are primarily useful for U.S. donors, there are still lots of non-U.S. donors who want to donate to us. And if people have ideas of how to do that without relying on something such as PayPal, or I don't mind the payment service, but PayPal is known to be sketchy. So if
they're a bank, but they're not a bank, and they go to court, crap like that.
Right. So if there's a legitimate, reasonable payment service or some other way, we've also talked about getting a merchant account with a bank, a more legitimate bank. But that hasn't happened yet.
Then PayPal, because we're pretty happy with First ID.
No, I'm talking about something like Echo, like I mentioned online.
Right.
But yeah,
but they may not know that.
This is probably going to be an administrative nightmare, but could the people in particular countries where, if you've got a lot of people donating a fiver, then it's just annoying. Yeah, then it accumulates in the local country. If you actually want to get that into the States, you do it all in one go.
Yeah.
So Debian becomes an international courier firm, basically, because we go all over the place all the time.
That does turn out to be pretty hard because of various countries' laws regarding.
It depends on the organization that it's coming from, because it's relatively easy to get money in. It's not SPI's problem, but for other charitable organizations, it can look like it's a feeder organization or something, and it can get a little tricky. But I think that maybe another thing that could be really useful is kind of helping both codify and map out some of the relationships between SPI and other organizations. Like what is the relationship between Debian, between I don't know, these
The other thing, you're saying that none of all the money comes from donations.
Yeah, I mean, we don't sell anything.
In the UK, Debian UK's got a few £1,000s. That's all from profits made at stalls on expos.
Yeah,
not that we actually try to make a profit.
This is my point.
So how does that work in the States? When people
I
turn up at
think
expos, who gets the money?
In the past, I mean, this hasn't happened lately because what's happened is Ubuntu has dumped a shitload of CDs on people. So Debian doesn't actually distribute any CDs anymore. But what used to happen was we would offer T-shirts at various booths at, like, say, Linux World on both coasts, and in exchange for a donation, you would get a T-shirt.
Yeah.
So the revenues in excess of the costs would be donated to the Debian project, and those would come through SPI.
Debian sold that last time.
So Debian still does that.
CDs?
SPI does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way to.
I was at the one in San Francisco, and well, anyway.
It happened in Boston.
I love you all, but I want to hear the other talk.
They were gone before you showed up.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I was a little ignorant about.
You don't
We just didn't have enough.
I think that money often goes to SPI still, or no?
The money did go to SBI. The one from Boston certainly did.
Yeah, it does.
I walked out with like $3,000 in cash from SBI. And after being a trip back to New York.
I don't remember that actually coming in.
I sent it to Matt Taggart, who then sent it to you.
Okay.
So,
I have to review my
because
papers.
Matt had purchased all the T-shirts.
Right, and he
So,
needed
so
some.
I sent him the T-shirts. He took out whatever. I sent him a check. He took out whatever.
Right.
Thank God.
So you know, the funniest check like that I ever got was from Clint Adams after New York one year, and the memo field of the check was Linux World Aftermath after math. It was very cute.
So I think I have your adapter, like I said, in the email. You think that the email?
Oh, nice.
Basically, I didn't want to leave it unattended in the Snooki because it's too easy to get lost and it's something you don't want to lose, you know.
I know. Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Checkbooks?
Huh?
Checkbooks?
I have them.
No, I thought that's what you were talking
No.
about Mako about. Oh, okay.
No, his universal power adapter.
Okay. Yeah.